On air live. All right, we'll see when it starts. Live stream is starting soon. I can't have both tabs open, I don't think, because my computer may overheat, like the time that we were talking about. What were we even talking about that time? Venezuela.
Okay, are we live now?
Not quite. Give it a few seconds. 11:59.
Okay.
All right, I think we are live now. I am Conncast here. I'm here with RudyTeaches. We're gonna do a little lunchtime talk about federations and integration and all that kind of nice stuff that has to do with countries and cultural homogeneity and all that.
Yes.
So, I mean, definitions are important. So I guess we're just going to talk about like integrated countries. There's a lot of countries with a lot of different cultures within them, but a lot of them were made that way by conquest, which is sort of a different thing from what we're talking about. I mean, for instance, China has a lot of different cultural zones, but most of them were not added to the Han Chinese voluntarily.
Yes, it was a process of conquests. First by the Han, then we have the Mongols too, that aided in the process of integrating China as we know it right now.
Yeah, you don't really hear about it much, but China does have some social issues and ethnic tensions, just not our side of the world. So as far as like voluntary integration goes, I guess we've got Germany, we've got the United States, the United Kingdom.
But are we talking about integration in like states or integration of multiple states? Because
like integration of multiple states into one country that somewhat functions.
Like, for example, the United States, the Russian Federation, Germany, as you mentioned right now.
Yeah. I mean, the Russian Federation is a little bit of a, same with Germany to a certain degree, but the Russian Federation is a little bit of both because a lot of them are really part of it voluntarily because they were conquered so long ago that how are they supposed to hold an independent state?
Yes.
But basically the way this usually happens is that either one culture is shared among various countries, or one culture that has become richer than another culture offers the option of integration to a country that is the majority another culture, and they accept. Sometimes this can be an economic thing, sometimes it can be a defense thing, but it really depends. A lot of stuff was created, of course, in European monarchies like the Austro-Hungarian Empire. You know, how many countries did that split up into?
That's one of the earliest examples of integration between two countries. Then we have another example, most recent, could be, for example, Yugoslavia.
Yeah.
There was a series of peoples that were integrated into one country. But we saw that in the 90s, these people just went apart because the racial, the cultural tensions that were between them were too much to keep them glued on. You know, like, for example, when they had the communist regime back in the Cold War.
Yeah, and, you know, I mean, like a lot of historians have said Tito died in the 80s, but the the chairman and his council managed to keep him effectively alive for quite a bit longer than that, just to prevent everybody from killing each other like they eventually did. But yeah, that's an interesting.
It was really. Oh
Like,
yeah, continue. I'm sorry.
Yeah, he had a really strong cult of personality. He, I mean, he wasn't a good person per se, but he wasn't overly brutal like a lot of them were, especially towards the later part of his regime. From my understanding, I've never been to Yugoslavia, but if you're gonna just sort of mishmash all these cultures together, you either need a pretty good reason for them to stay together, or sort of ruling with an iron fist, which is a pretty good reason for them to stay together, don't you think?
Yes, like the extinct Soviet Union, right?
Yeah. No, in the United States, I mean, aside from that one thing that happened in the 1860s and several political disagreements, has been pretty solid as far as these countries go. They haven't, post-Civil War, there hasn't been anything taken seriously to chop it up. Even though I do hope California secedes.
Because there was also there were also talks about Texan secession, right?
Yeah, there were during the second Obama election. Sorry. Yeah, the second Obama election. I don't think Obama would have let it happen, though, under any circumstances.
Yes.
Because, one, that would weaken him and not strengthen him. And two, Texas is a border state. So there's really a lot to gain for the Democratic Party in the long run there.
Yeah, because of massive immigration of Mexicans and Central Americans there, because they will come into the country due to Democrat policies, and they will be thankful towards the Democratic Party, so they will start voting for them. And since Latin Americans have that cultural thing of voting for the same party that your parents vote for, then it will be generations upon generations of people voting Democrat.
Yeah, I mean, then there's also, if you look at the stats, the native voter base, like native white voter base, not counting, it ends up being like 51-49 on average if you tally up the elections. But that's what's called normal. But like for Central Americans and Mexicans, it takes 4 to 5 generations to normalize into that voting pattern.
So we have like 50 years of Democratic advantage in border states.
Yeah. And Texas is still really red because you know how Texas is, but not everywhere. Look at New Mexico and California. But anyways, back to like federations. Both me and Rudy live in Central America. And a little history primer. There was, in the 1800s, La República Federal de Centroamérica Los Altos.
Or also known as the United States of Central America, too.
Yeah, that was the common name, like in the West, because it's easier to say.
Than the República Federal, yes.
Yeah, the Federal Republic of Central America and the Highlands. So that included like everything from Costa Rica to Guatemala and a little bit of Mexico, hence the Los Altos part. And even though even though there was a fair amount of cultural homogeneity, especially in like I believe like in that time period, Honduras, El Salvador, and Nicaragua were fairly fairly similar. Am I correct? They were sort of the core.
Yes,
Am I picking up?
they were fairly similar. In fact, today they are very, very similar. It's like all, especially Honduras, El Salvador, and Nicaragua are basically the same. The only thing that's different between the three countries is that in Nicaragua you have the Sandinistas there, the people
Yeah,
that got power after the revolution in the 70s, and in Honduras. Honduras is basically the same as El Salvador. The only thing that is keeping us separate is that thing that happened in the 60s, the football war. That's the only
yeah,
thing that is separating our peoples, because in customs, culture, uh, everything is similar. You go to Honduras, you go to El Salvador, it's basically the same everywhere.
yeah. Except you guys have pupusas.
Yeah, we have pupusas. The Honduras call them baleadas, but they're
Ah,
basically pupusas.
same deal.
Supposedly we made them. Yeah, it's the same deal.
But like those are all things that happened post the dissolution of the United States of Central America.
Central America, yes.
Yeah. So those are all differences that really the fissures were opened after that happened. And the main saboteurs of the United States of Central America were Costa Rica, because Costa Rica has a really they've got a lot of independent spirit because they went after William Walker. If you don't know who that is and you're watching, look him up. It's pretty crazy. And also because they have this weird delusion that they're all white. But I'd imagine
it's
that
not
wasn't.
only that. I'm sorry,
Yeah,
but
no, keep
what I
going.
wanted to say is that it's not only that they think that they're white. The thing is that supposedly they maintain a better cultural exchange with South America than with Central America, or at
Yeah.
least that's what I feel that they think. Uh,
And
because in the colonial time, Costa Rica was like the port of entrance of all the goods that came from South America that
yeah,
they wanted to transport to Europe.
yeah, I mean
All
that's why
the things that they
it's
produced
called
in.
Costa Rica Rich Coast.
Yeah, because what they did is that everything that countries like Peru, Chile, Ecuador, Colombia, all of those things that they produced, they send them to Costa Rica, and then from by land, they transported those things. Well, let's say to Nicaragua, to Guatemala, to be transported to the
Mhm.
metropolitan cities back at Europe, in Spain. Um, so that cultural exchange that they had, that's why they think that they're not inherently Central American, that they just belong to the geographical part of Central America, but culturally they belong more to South America.
Yeah,
Um,
like
but yeah,
the
uh,
yeah, and in the history books in English, most of the explanation is just that some of the countries didn't feel that they had a Central American unified identity. And I'd imagine Guatemala would probably be part of that too, because they are ethnically a lot more indigenous. Am I correct? If not ethnically, then at least identitary in an identitarian sense.
yes, that's true. Yeah, that's another thing. There were far more indigenous peoples in Guatemala than, let's say, in Costa Rica. But in Costa Rica, basically there weren't any Indios at all.
Yeah.
The only Indians that they had, they lived in the Caribbean part of Costa Rica. So it
Hmm.
was basically populated by criollos, by Spanish people that were
Yeah.
born there.
Yeah.
So maybe that's one of the reasons why they consider themselves to be culturally and politically different from Central America. But speaking the truth, they were very, very unimportant back in the colonial era, because they were just a
Yeah.
port of entrance, you know.
Hmm.
They just deliver goods to the real
And
important part of Central America, that was Guatemala.
yeah, and it's really, I mean, it's a really tough place to colonize. It's a tough place to, I mean, now it's a little different, but it's, pretty dense and very, very mountainous. There's, I mean, even Panama has low places of entry. That's why they built the canal here, but
Hmm.
it's got some high mountains. It's got a big central spine going through it. So a lot of it is taken up by what is now considered valuable terrain, but what is then would probably be considered fairly difficult and less useful terrain.
Yeah, because it's all jungle and mountains, right there in the middle of Costa Rica. So the Spanish weren't going to bother trying to
Yeah,
colonize those places. First, they weren't acclimatized to living there in the jungle. There were also diseases, that
yeah. There's
that they could get.
malaria,
There's
dysentery.
also the inconvenience. I'm sorry, yeah. There was also the inconvenience of transporting goods inland through all of those terrain, through all that terrain, and it was
Yeah,
a pretty difficult job. So they basically avoided going to the middle of Costa Rica, and they just lived in the coast. If you can look at a map of Costa Rica, you will notice that most of the population lives in the coast.
yeah. Except for that capital city they have there. But I think I'm from Alberta, and the capital of Alberta was really just put there as a make work project to avoid conflict of interest and keep keep the capital out of the biggest city at the time.
Like what they did in Brazil too, because the capital of Brazil is not Rio de Janeiro or Sao
Yeah, it's
Paulo. That there
Brasilia.
are, it's Brasilia that was built in the '60s, right in the middle of the country, for the exact same reasons that you have mentioned
Yeah,
right
yeah.
now.
Exactly. I mean, I don't know a lot. We could talk about Brazil, but I don't know that much about Brazilian history, to be totally honest with you. Um, but I mean, there are certain requirements to integrating different countries together. And a big one is economic. Like, there's Germany was integrated, like, what was it, 28 years ago? And there's,
Rio, the
yeah,
reunification, like when they
hmm,
joined together again, it was back in the '90s,
yeah, yeah,
uh, 1990. That means that it's, yeah, 27 years.
yeah. And even though East Germany was multitudes poorer than West Germany, it was still an industrial center. And it was, they had a good amount of production, so it would facilitate adjustment. But even now, 20 some years later, there's serious rifts economically between East and West Germany, which is,
Hmm.
um, which means that countries like North Korea and South Korea, there is, even if there was a war and one conquered the other, integration would be almost impossible because South Korea is so many multitudes richer than North Korea is now.
I have read about the subject, and what the economists say is that if South Korea and North Korea join again, then there will be a Korean economic miracle, because the South will be able to exploit all of the resources that the North has been neglecting all of these years, because they don't have enough machinery, they don't have enough logistics
Mm-hmm.
to exploit the reserves that they have, the mineral reserves, gas reserves, whatever they have, they don't have enough resources to exploit them. So it will be like a huge boom, a huge economic boom, but it will come with a cost,
Yeah, I
because
mean, a lot of people
they
in
will
North
have
Korea
to.
are really going to be left behind because, like, I mean, a lot of the techs that work there are working on tech from the 50s, and it would take them a long time to adjust. Everybody who has
Yeah.
anything to do with like the academics are really good at repeating things that never actually happened. And I mean,
there's another thing, the indoctrination that they have been suffering all throughout these years. They will have to be basically reprogrammed to function in the current world.
No, I mean, it would be, I can't even imagine. And even like, I think like the only people that could work in a Korean reunification situation would be like math teachers and pretty much unskilled labor, I think. Like I can't think of any other profession that hasn't
like any other
not been changed since the 60s or doesn't have anything to do with the great glorious leader whom a unicorn gave birth to.
Oh my God! It will be a sight to behold. You know, I hope that I'm alive by the time that Korea gets unified, without bloodshed, of course, because we don't want going nuclear just to unify the Koreas.
Yeah, that would be pretty brutal. I think that Kim Jong-un is, despite keeping power, has a really, really poor approval rating compared to his father, if I'm not mistaken. He just doesn't seem nearly as charismatic and doesn't have the same, I mean, obviously inherited part of the cult of personality that they created for themselves, but yeah, anyways.
But yeah, he just inherited it.
Yeah. I mean, and if you look at videos of him like a year or two before his dad died, he really didn't want anything to do with running the country. But you know, some of the
I guess that he will have preferred. Oh, I'm sorry. I was going to say that he will have preferred to stay in Europe, you know, spending his father's money and you know, eating fantasies and you know, being with the European ladies. But he had to run his father's country. He had to inherit the position of leader of North Korea, and yeah, he looks basically like a man child. Like he doesn't want to be there. There's other people that they are actually running the country in his place, but he doesn't want anything to do about it.
Yeah, I mean,
he's even scared of
he
the
actually
people,
looks
if
like
you
somebody
notice in
who
the
may
videos.
be he looks like somebody who may unironically be a shit poster. Yes.
I'm just leaving some ginger and turmeric on the chair out here for your mom.
All right, thank you. Sorry about that.
Don't worry.
Yeah. But I mean, the advantages of integration for, you know, most countries that have integrated are usually like the economies benefit, of course, because the single market's better, which means they can negotiate. They have more negotiating power with trade deals outside, and they have automatic free trade inside.
Yes, that's absolutely true. Right now, I'm studying international affairs in the university, and I'm currently studying integration, in fact. And we're studying the case of the European Union. And, well, economically, it's a behemoth. It's a beast because
it can
because
throw
of the
its weight
things that you
around.
have. And well, other people wanted to follow the same example because they saw that it was good. They saw that they raised their economic levels. They were actually competitive in in this new multipolar world that we're living in. They were able to stand their ground against China and the United States. So many similar popped up around the world. We have SICA here in Central America, Sistema de Integración Centroamericano, or Central American Integration System in English. There's also the ECOWAS, in Western Africa. The
Yeah.
economic what was the name? Economic Council of
West
Western
Africa.
African States.
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. They have become economic unions. Supposedly, the ultimate goal is to become something rather similar to the European Union. Um,
Yeah.
in the case of Central America, the exact same goals, we have the exact same goals as the European Union. We want to become a political and economic union. Um,
Yeah. I mean,
and well, uh-huh, yeah.
yeah, the biggest issue with the European Union and why it's dissolving is one, because the economies are just too far spread apart. As far as levels go, you can't really put Latvia on the same level as Germany.
Yes,
And
that's
two,
true.
the countries have very different population bases as far as culture goes, as far as, again, economics goes, as far as even size has something to do with it, because Germany doesn't benefit from the European Union nearly as much as, say, Lithuania. But
Yeah,
those
the
issues
smallest
aren't really.
countries. Oh, I'm sorry, Connor. I'm sorry. It's
Yeah,
just that the ideas come to my head, and it's like I have to
yeah,
say them, but you're still with your train of thought. What I wanted to say is that small countries benefit at the political level because they acquire political
yeah,
power within the union, but economically, it can be a burden because they don't have the same capacity to cover expenses as, say, Germany, Italy, France, the big players of the European Union.
hmm
So it's like there's a balance right there, a balance between power, yeah, hard power and soft power inside of Europe, economic power, politic power. There's a little balance right there,
and
and
that's also why the
they
European Union distributes so much money into smaller and less developed economies, as opposed to proportionately, which of course pisses you off if you like having a sovereign country, hence Brexit. But
do you believe that? Do you believe that there will be a Frexit
a
eventually?
Frexit,
In the case that Marine Le Pen wins in France?
I don't think. I don't actually think so. I think if there was a Frexit, um, in Brussels they'd just you know throw in the towel. It would be the end of it. It would be just Germany and its orbiters at that point. But I think if there was one, that would be the final nail in the coffin, to be honest.
Yeah, it will be really difficult because France and Germany were the first ones that started it all,
Mhm.
that started the whole project
Yeah,
with the European community of coal and steel. Um,
yeah,
I don't remember the exact name in English, but yeah, they start sharing coal and steel
yeah. So
so
that they
that
wouldn't go
they
to
could.
wouldn't go to war again.
Yeah, and it was a pretty good idea. That's another benefit of integration, that there are some things that keep you together and keep you from fighting with your neighbors. Uh, Basically, the European Union started because Europe didn't want to wage war uh, against each other. France didn't want to go to war with Germany. Germany didn't want to go to war with everyone. So they basically said, "Well, we're going to put all of our effort to promote one single thing. We are going to try to we will try to get along on one single thing." And what they chose was coal and steel,
Yeah,
and they saw that it worked. So it was like, okay, we we have seen it. We can work together, and we don't have to go to war in order to improve this. So we are going to go all the way. And they created the European. What's the name? But yeah, they basically
Yeah, I
integrated
know what
all
you're
the
talking about.
economy.
Yeah, but yeah, as far as that goes, I mean, I think Central American integration today would be far more effective than even European integration proportionately, because all of the countries are more or less the same size. You don't have one that's a total behemoth and one that's just a little, barely a state. You don't have the language barrier.
Mhm.
And even though the cultural thing could come up again, as far as Costa Rica and Guatemala go, I think a Guatemalan and a Costa Rican share far more with a Honduran than a Dane shares with an Italian or a Greek. But that's just my personal opinion. Additionally,
Well,
when we were,
yep.
yeah, you go.
Well, I was going to say that we're currently trying to make it work. Like we
Yeah,
are seriously trying to make it work. We already struck a deal with the European Union for free trade, and they will be also helping us with cooperation programs as the European Union towards the SICA, towards the Central American Union, the Central American Union. Uh, but the thing that politically, Central America is still in its infancy. Like
yeah.
we are still fighting over petty things. And there's a lot of petty nepotism, a lot of
Oh yeah, yeah.
petty
Don't even get me started
corruption.
on all the government nepotism here, man.
And yeah, we have that problem. It's like everyone wants to outsmart the other, and that's not how unions work. I mean, when you're working in a group of people, you have to take choices, and the choices that you have to make have to be equally beneficial for everyone. But what happens
Yeah,
here is that we go to the table and say we're going to export cocoa to the European Union, and comes Guatemala and says, well, since I have the land, then I will produce all the cocoa here, but then let me get uh, a greater share of the let me get a greater share of the sales that we make
yeah,
to the European Union. And it's not like that. It's like if we are going to make a project, a Central American project, then we can do it in all the area. It doesn't just have to be Guatemala, but the Guatemalans want to have the lion's share of the cake for themselves. So it's like, well, if we cannot make it work, then we won't do it, and
yeah.
it's not done. And then
No, I
goes
mean, there's no
Guatemala.
doubt that there's a lot of squabbling that goes on inside and between the countries. Um, Also, I mean, a big part of Central American unification skepticism
Hmm.
is that there's really a lot of civil problems in some of these. I mean, El Salvador, all about that, like the gangs in Honduras.
Yeah.
Nicaragua isn't quite as bad. Guatemala isn't quite as bad. Costa Rica is fairly bad in the cities, but basically, the mentality of people is, don't bring your problems here. Even if I'm sure Salvadorians don't want Honduran gangs running around their cities.
Hmm. We certainly don't want any more gangs running amok in our cities.
Yeah,
But you know what the true problem with this is? It's that uh, we could solve this situation, like if we just sat seriously all the political groups sat together and said, we're in deep shit. We're really in deep shit. So we need to solve this first, so that, we can inherit our children a better place. But the thing is that since they already have their life solved, they already have enough money, to go away, to live in the United States, live in Europe, in any other place. It's like, well,
Name one Central American president that doesn't have a condo in Aspen or Miami.
Well, I didn't know that. That a lot of Central American presidents had a condo in Aspen. I've heard of Miami.
Miami. Everybody, But the point is just that they're really in it to enrich themselves more than anything.
Because we could have the potential to become even a regional power, because we have the canal.
Additionally,
canal. And additionally, we will have the Nicaraguan canal that the Chinese are trying to build. We have great infrastructure in all Central America. We have great roads. We have great ports, great airports. We could be a central hub of transport between the two hemispheres, West Hemisphere and East Hemisphere. We are in a very crucial position in the world, but we can't exploit that because we are fighting amongst ourselves.
None of the Central American states have any real political power either, just because we're too small. Like,
yes,
all of these countries are just getting eaten up by China or the U.S., usually in the form of either Taiwan or South Korea, because the U.S. usually has some negative connotations. But I mean, if you walk into like a public health center in at least Panama, I don't know about El Salvador, but you look at the posters and all kinds of whatever the doctors are using, and all you see is USAID, government of Taiwan, South Korea, paid for by the government of China. It's like sort of like a secret. The Cold War was highly publicized, but this really isn't because it's not as open.
Yeah, there's a cooperation war between a lot of Asian partners. We have South Korea with KOICA, that's the name, Korean International Aid something. We have JICA too, Cooperation Agency. I'm sorry, Korean International Cooperation Agency, that's the name. And there's JICA, that is the Japanese International Cooperation Agency. And we have but the case of Taiwan is because basically we are some of the countries that still support Taiwan as an independent country. If I remember correctly, there are only 23 countries around the world that still recognize Taiwan. So they spend a lot of money on us because we are basically keeping them alive.
No, I remember when Martinelli first got in, like Panama has sort of like an Air Force One sort of deal. They've got a private jet that the president can fly around in. But like the first day in office, he, flew it over to Taiwan, got a jet from them that was 10 times better, and said, I'm never looking at this thing again. No, but
now that you mentioned that, Taiwan is responsible for a lot of cases of corruption here in Central America. We've had two Salvadorian presidents that have been involved in corruption with Taiwan, that they have received funds from Taiwan that were supposed to be used as relief first for the for Salvador's 2001 earthquakes. $15 million were stolen by then President Francisco Flores. He was in prison for that in 2015, but he supposedly died in prison of an embolism, but people don't believe that because they were really shady about it, and
Mhm.
the coffin was
No,
sealed.
I think a large part with both the civil cases, as far as like gangs and all that go,
Mhm.
and the political cases, that is that clear and simple. The justice system needs to get an overhaul. Like I know in
Yes,
Panama,
definitely.
if you're like a drug dealer or a corrupt politician, they can send you to jail and they can fine you, and then they can take anything that's not registered properly because you were using it to run drugs or whatever, like cars and boats.
Mhm.
But pretty much, if you have land, it's still yours once you get out of prison. If you have money, cash, it's still yours when you get out of prison. If you got gold and silver and assets and all that, it's still yours when you get out of prison.
Yeah, a lot of people they just got to prison like for 8, 10 years,
Yeah,
and they aren't exactly in the worst of conditions because they get a lot of benefits. They
yeah, of
got
course they do. They can
they
make pretty good promises.
Yeah, they get better sales. They can have commodities inside jail. You can visit them more often. So it's like, how would you say, an extended vacation where
Yeah,
you
and
can get
also in
out of.
Panama, they actually just got finished passing a law that people over a certain age can't be put into a regular prison.
Oh, really?
Meaning the day that they passed that law, Manuel Noriega got to move back to his house.
Ah, the micellar arrest. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So now
So
he can only, poor guy, he can only go into his mansion in his enormous estate. Don't you feel sorry for him?
and well, he's in his house. He can spend all that money that he stole, and it's
Yeah, yeah,
no problem as long as he doesn't get out of his mansion. Everything
yeah,
is okay.
yeah. No,
It's pretty sad. I want to cry
it
right
is.
now.
Yeah, no. A lot of this stuff, if you don't laugh, it's better to laugh than cry. To be honest, about a lot of this stuff. No,
But
but
yeah, going back to the topic of integration, uh, we have pretty great examples around the world of countries that integrated and they were successful. And well, something that I wanted to discuss with you too is that integration can also benefit the developed countries, like for example the United States. Uh, Most of the people in Central America, they choose to live here. They choose to live because
because there's no opportunities, and instead of going to Honduras, it's easier to just to go to the U.S.
yeah, exactly.
Even if there was great job opportunities in Panama or Costa Rica or a place that they would rather go, because they're closer culturally, the U.S. just blows them out of the water. And if they're going to illegally immigrate somewhere, it might as well be a place where they can make 10 times more money.
Yeah, exactly. So what will happen if we solve that the problems that we have at the political level and we integrate it? As I said before, we're in a very privileged position and we could exploit a lot of economic advantages that we have. So first,
And
right off the bat, we eliminate immigration into the United States, illegal immigration. Right off
yeah,
the
no,
bat.
the biggest ethnic group immigrating to the United States right now isn't Mexicans, it's Central Americans. They
Yeah,
just happen to go across Mexico on 21-day visas.
and they just cross the whole of Mexico and they
Yeah.
arrive to the border. And in the border, if they get when they ask them, "Where do you come from?" they say, "I come from Mexico." So what they do is
Mhm.
that they give them a plane to Mexico City, let's say, and they continue the journey from there. It's like
Yeah.
it's just a hiccup
Mhm.
into their trip to the United States. But yeah, what I want to say is that we can eliminate immigration if we just improve working opportunities here in Central America. Because first of all, people will be happy just to have a job. If they have a job, then they won't have the need to travel, because a lot of people that travel to
Yeah.
the United States, they are unemployed currently.
Yeah, and unless they have like a specific reason to be going to the United States or Europe, like, you know, the Muslims obviously want to go to Europe for the, you know, because that's their fatwa at the moment. But, you know, unless they have a specific reason, people would rather be with people that are culturally more similar than themselves.
Yes, and there's another thing. The other thing that will benefit, that all of the world could benefit from Central American integration and integration in other areas as well, is that they could have a very strong trading partner. Like the benefits could be mutual. As I
Yeah.
said, we could be a hub of communication between the West Coast and East Coast in the United States. Prices will go down because the product wouldn't be traveling as far and as long as it does right now. There could also be better distribution of goods between North America and South America, let's say, for as an example. Prices will go down all around the hemisphere, all around America.
Yeah.
In the case that we could make a project of integration that included a logistic project, as I mentioned before.
Mhm.
Another benefit that they will have, they will have a more secure area.
Yeah.
Drug dealing, it's a great concern for the United States. We have a lot of cartels and narcos working here in Central America.
No, I mean, like, that's what a lot of people don't really understand. You know, Central Americans really don't want anything to do with that either.
Yeah, because we're just countries of transit. The drug just passes by here.
They only bring problems. You know.
Yeah, it only brings problems. So people don't want to really deal with that. So
Mhm.
having a more secure Central America will help specifically the United States to stem a lot of the drug trades that have been going around. Like if we could have a stronger security in the area, we could stop a lot of the narco boats that go into the Caribbean Ocean and also the Pacific. Uh, it would be a great benefit for the United States if they are really interested in that, because drug
Yeah.
trade in the U.S. is really strong.
Yeah, and also, I mean, like, the U.S. really benefits a lot kicking the individual states around here.
Well, that's also true.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm really sorry, Rudy, but I'm gonna have to put an end to this session here because we've been going at it for almost an hour now. Don't want to make the
sorry.
video too unwatchable, but we'll come back again one day. This has been good.
Okay, wonderful. It's been a pleasure. It's been a
Yeah.
pleasure,
Okay.
Connor.
This has been
I'm also
RudyTeaches. Sorry?
I'm really looking forward to working on more of your videos.
Yeah, so I forgot to say, RudyTeaches, if you haven't read any of my descriptions or watched many of my videos, is my editor extraordinaire. He does a great job.
Thank you, man. Thank you. It's a
Okay.
pleasure to work on your videos.
Thanks. See you, Rudy.
See ya.